I'm in a game. I'm in a game. Hello, I'm in the video with my daddy.
All right, everybody. So we got another episode this week. I've got a very unique modeler. Does a bunch of cars and stuff that are going to be on this week. But I want to take a second and recap on the interview from last week. Yesterday was the auction over at Black Rifle Model Works. Really cool thing that happened over there. They earned a lot of money for that the thing they were doing. But it went really, really well. I'm glad everybody that watched it went over there and participated. I even got one of the auction bids, and I'll have a video up on that in a little bit. But here we go. How we doing, man?
Doing good. Yourself?
So first off, I'm going to let you plug your channel. And if you're on Facebook, Instagram, plug the stuff that you want to plug.
Yeah, really nothing too much. I do this and I put some finished models on Instagram. That's about it. I don't go on any of the other stuff. I have a Facebook page, but I seldom use it. So yeah, basically this is it. My YouTube channel, Doozer's Models, and been around for a few years. I don't post regularly. I don't ever want it to become a chore or a challenge or whatever that. So if I feel like posting or I have something I feel is relevant to put up, I'll put it up. And if a couple of weeks or a month or months go by without, then I don't.
So where did the name come from?
Actually, it's funny. My ex-wife's uncle, Pat, we used to get together for family get-togethers and stuff like that. And he used to always call me Doozer. So my name is Dwayne. So some people call me Dewey, some people call me Nudie, some people call me whatever and that. But he always called me Doozer. And when I was trying to look for a name for the channel, that came to mind. And I thought, Doozer's Models kind of flows off the tongue pretty good. So that's what we'll go with.
Yeah, that was one of the big questions I wanted to, because it's such a interesting name, right? I just was curious where it came from.
Yeah, I think it's just an extension of Dwayne, Dewey, Doozers, whatever. Yeah.
No, that's cool. So what is the stuff that you like to build?
Basically, I'm primarily a cars and trucks guy. I've got a handful of semis. I've got some aftermarket stuff and different things like that, but primarily cars. I like muscle cars. I like hot rods. I like race cars. I like trucks, customs, that sort of stuff. I even do the odd stock, factory stock, whatever suits my fancy, whatever strikes me when I look at a kid. I usually get an idea, and that's what I run with.
No, that's cool. What's your favorite car? Like Revell, Tamiya, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. For me, I guess some background. When I was a kid, I've got older brothers. I got half siblings, and they're all older than me. And so when I was a little kid, they were already mechanics. One brother's a mechanic, another one's a body man, another one's a painter, and that. So, and my dad was a mechanic. He specialized in foreign cars and different stuff like that. So I grew up in a garage. I grew up around cars. They played with RCs, RC airplanes, model cars, that sort of stuff. I remember as a small kid, we used to I was born in Castlegar, BC, which is in the Kootenays. And there's a town about 20 minutes away called Trail. And Trail always seemed to have better shopping and a little bit bigger place. So we used to go there every once in a while for shopping. And they had a store called Rock Island Records and Tapes. And at the very back corner, they had a table, and on it, they had models. And to date myself, I remember their models were like $1.50, $2, $2.25. and they just have this stack of random models on the back of this old table. And so I used to save up my allowance money, and I'd go there and buy a model or two when we went to town. And they primarily were AMT, MPC, and Johann at the time. So I grew up focusing basically on 125th scale. I always thought 125th scale was the way to go. I didn't really care for monogram a whole bunch. I found their plastic quite thick, and I don't know, they just seemed out of proportion to me. So I focused on 125th scale for years. And then I realized I'd inadvertently bought a few 124s, you know, never really looked at it that close. It was a subject matter I wanted, and then put it up beside something else and it looked out of place. And then a few years ago, I discovered HobbyLink Japan, and they focused on the Japanese market, which is all 124 scale. But it opened up a whole new market for Ferraris and Lamborghinis and tuners and stuff like that AMT and MPC generally didn't make. I preferred MT and MPC to Revel because back in that time, Revel, in my opinion, was making really crappy models. Their plastic was thin and very rigid and warped all the time, and their wheels and tires were substandard. So I found AMT was my go-to kit. I kick myself now. I didn't really get into Johann a lot. I didn't really like a lot of their subject matter. They did a lot of like big Cadillacs and Mercuries and stuff like that, which really wasn't my gig. I was into Camaros and Chevelles and Mustangs and stuff like that. So I passed on a lot of Johanns. Had I had the foresight, I could have turned some $1.25 kits into $100 kits, but it's not about the money for me. I'm more of a builder and a collector than the financial end of it. But yeah, looking back on it, shoulda, coulda, woulda, right?
Right. Yeah, it's pretty crazy when you start looking at some of that stuff from HobbyLink or the Japan site that you talked about. Yeah. I always go over there to look at some of the like super rare cars, like the Mad Max.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think they've got the Back to the Future car. I think that's one of theirs now. Kit from Knight Rider. Yeah. There's all kinds of like very unique cars that they have now over there.
Yeah, what I found was they had like the exotics, right? Like Paganis and Lamborghinis and Ferraris and Lotus and all those stuff that AMT MPC rarely make, if ever. And when they did make it, it was a 124 scale regurgitated Fuji or Fujima anyway. So I mean, it is what it is. Like for me on the shelf to buy to me a Lamborghini, I'm looking at $110. You can get them for like 32 US, which translate to about 45 plus about $5 to $10 for shipping if you group them into 7 or 8 at a time. So you're into it for $50 as opposed to 110. So it's a lot better way to go. But what's funny is the same AMT kits that I can buy off the shelf here for 35 or 40 are 70 or 80. You know, so it's because they got to import it there. Why pay exorbitant fee to import it back? So you got to kind of be aware of what manufacturers come from where, so you're not paying it to double ship it, basically. So
okay, that makes sense. That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So with all those manufacturers, what's the coolest kit you've put together?
Oh wow, that's a tough one. Coolest kit I've ever put together. I've got some funny cars and some rails and some open wheel modifieds and stuff that I built. I like those. I like gassers and stuff. I don't think I have one specific kit that I really got. Like the one kit, actually, it's funny that I've done. I'm a motorcycle guy. I've raced motorcycles. I raced motocross when I was a kid. I've always had a street bike. And I built this one. This is the first ever street bike I ever built. And I think it was an Aoshima or one of those brands. But it was really cool and fun to put together. So that was kind of interesting. And now I've bought a whole bunch more bike kits that I plan to build. That's the only one that I have. I got a stack of them that are on the list of to do.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I've seen some of the bike kits. The ones that Tamiya has is probably some of the better stuff.
yeah. To me, is the Cadillac of Japanese kits for sure. They're the best. The best engineered, go together the best. The most detail in them. They're good.
Yeah, and like the products that come with that, or the aftermarket stuff, like that go
Yeah.
with Tamiya, they're like the glue. They've got a whole putty line. They've got paints. It's super crazy. That
Right. I
whole
mean, how many how many people have the extra thin? I mean, this stuff's a game saver, right? Now you can clamp your pieces together and get everything pre-assembled, drop a bit of glue in the joint and you're set. So I mean that's a huge advantage over the old tube glue days where you got the big goober of glue that you got to try to fit in somewhere.
and then I try to buy a lot of my supplies from Hobby Lobby or Michaels, and I've noticed that like Hobby Lobby is switching to this stuff. And of course the green screen won't work, but there's Mr.
Okay.
Cement Deluxe.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's, and I'm getting to where I like it. I mean, it's not the same, that's for sure, even though it looks like it's in the same bottle.
Well, I think trial and error, but learning to use the right glue for the right application is definitely key, and having different options is there. Like I'll use 5-minute epoxy for stuff that I know is going to be pretty easy to break off. I'll use Mod Podge or Elmer's glue or the clear tester stuff for clear application. Obviously, if you're using resins or 3D printed stuff, you got to use CA. So, I mean, it's knowing what glue to use for what application, and having a lot of options is definitely key to building a higher end model for sure.
So we'll get probably more into this later, but you've gotten into the 3D printed side of it. How are you liking that with the car side?
Yeah, for me, the 3D printer, I used to sell for a company called Studio Y Creations, and we did huge 3D props. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever been to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee or not, but there's a Hollywood Wax Museum there with an Empire State Building with a 44-foot gorilla on the top of it. Well, we built, manufactured, designed, and installed that gorilla. So it's a steel frame with foam carved with a polyurethane hard coat and airbrushed and put together. So huge stuff. And so I've been in the 3D world for a long time, and we had the 3D printer way back when. I think it was like $20,000 or $30,000, and it was a gypsum based product. And so basically what it did is it took layers of gypsum, which is like the powder part of drywall, and then it would lay down layers of CA glue. And so it would build this huge cube, and then you'd shake all the loose stuff off, and it would leave the part where the CA glue was to do 3D sculpture. So I've been exposed to the 3D world for a very long time, and we did a lot of rad prototyping and different stuff like that with it. But at $30,000, $40,000, it was obviously unattainable. But I watched them and watched them and watched them. And the SLA printers became sort of the first out to become somewhat reasonable. But I think for modeling, the detail just wasn't quite there. But now that the reverse resin printers come available, and like you can get a good one for $300, $350 or whatever. And so that made them available to a lot of people. So it was probably 2 years ago, I bought an Elegoo Mars, and it had the small print plate, 6-inch print plate, and relatively low resolution and quite slow doing it. I think each layer was 20 seconds or something like that. Like it took a long, but it was cool, and it did well for a while. But I found the learning curve was really tough for me because the information just wasn't out there at the time. I couldn't get it to print consistently. I'd get one good print and then I'd get a fail, and I didn't know if it was supports or exposure or what the issue was. File availability was really hard. There wasn't much out there, and what was out there was really expensive, and not too much of it was tailored to model cars. So I basically had that machine for a year before I even really got any traction with it, before I sort of figured out my exposure time and my supports and finally found some files. I could have, had I dedicated myself, probably learned to build my own files, but just didn't have the time and really wasn't all that motivated to do it. And again, the software for that was quite expensive. Now you can get it for free or very reasonable pricing, whatever. So it's a whole different world. But I basically wore that machine out. It's got a broken pixel in it now, so I get holes in certain areas, so it makes it kind of tough to print. So I splurged and went and bought the Anycubic 6X Photon, whatever it is. And so it's got like the 9.25-inch build plate. Each layer's less than 2 seconds. I mean, it's a big thing, and it's taken my printing to a whole new level. It's sort of a bittersweet thing. Oh, and the availability of files too. Now with Cubix 3D and a lot of other people that are producing files, Miguel over at Hobbyworks and those types of guys. So the availability for model related files is a lot better. I saw Chucky showed some thing that he's on. I'm going to take a look at that, where you buy a subscription and every month you get files, and then you can buy other files at discount prices and that sort of stuff. That looks like a pretty interesting business model. It's kind of cool. So yeah, so with the availability of files, the better, faster printer, and getting a little bit better with it, I'm to the point now where I'm fairly comfortable and doing a lot more printing at the time. I'm building a kit for the old Tom Rambler 69 appreciation. So I got his frame and a body painted up for it.
Okay.
And I got some wheels that I 3D printed up for it. So it's going to be a pretty cool build when it comes together, but I wanted an engine that was something kind of unique and specific. So I found a file and built this 3D engine. Now, if you look at it closely, it's sorry, I don't know my left from my right, but it's a supercharged. It's got that supercharger kind of off to the side.
Right.
And then the carbs are up on the thing or whatever that. So I think that'll be a neat addition to that kit, and it'll kind of take it to the next level. That's what I'm hoping anyways. We'll see. But that's 3D printed. The wheels and tires are 3D printed. The engine's 3D printed. So yeah, I'm starting to implement the 3D printed parts into it a lot more. A couple other ones. I've had these ones for a while, but I've got the Boss 429.
Oh, there you go. That's
dual
cool.
4 ton of RAM on it, transmission. So I got that one, and then I got an LS with twin turbos.
Wow, that that looks like that could be fun to paint.
Yeah, so come up with some cool kind of stuff like that. And I don't know how far you want to get into it, but I've got lots and lots of stuff that I did. Like this is a whole box of 572 Chevy engines. There's probably 15 or 20 of them in there.
Well, see, and that's the cool thing about 3D printing. Like, if you want to print out a bunch of stuff, you can just load up the bed plate and print like 100 of them at once if you can fit that many on there, right?
Yeah, I think I could print 4 of those in one plate on my 9.25-inch build plate.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool how you can, I mean, it's still, you have to get the resin, and it's still a process, but at least once you get it kind of figured out. And I will say this on my side of it, because it took me probably at least a year to figure out the resin printing.
Yeah.
Before I was halfway decent at it. And now I print out stuff like this.
Yeah.
I mean,
figures are cool. I mean, it's something, if I wasn't so invested in the cars and trucks, I'd probably venture that way. But to me, to get into a whole nother line of paint and stuff or whatever, it's just It's too much. If I built one of these kits every day for the rest of my life, I still wouldn't build them all. So I really can't justify adding a new a new avenue. So we'll stick with what we do, I think, for now.
I see, I'm gonna bring this up mostly because I think the figure painting side of it opens up so much more potential for the car side of it. Because when you go to do the details inside the car, all the little tricks you can do on how to highlight a figure or dry brushing, it all applies.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think
So
the crossover is huge. Like even the military guys, right? Like their weathering techniques and all the stuff they do, you can transcend that to building your cars and doing stuff. Like you said, the shadows and the highlights and the whatever. I mean, you can take a seat and you can paint it black and stick it in the model and it looks great. But if you know how to accent the curves and the shadows and the whatever, and that, now you get a seat that looks and feels like it's leather and it's dimensional, and you can put wear in it, and you can take it just to so much higher levels. I know a lot of you guys are familiar with Dr. Cranky. He doesn't produce a whole lot anymore, but there for a while he was sort of the go-to guy on YouTube. And he always says, anytime you can put something that's a point of interest, throw a magazine on the seat, put a hard hat on the floor, throw a toolbox in the box, anytime you can add interest. So if you take that a bit further and you put the magazine with some shadows on it and a folded page and whatever that, or Coke bottle with a little bit of spillage on the side, or, stuff like that, it all adds interest, right? And I think a lot of that stuff comes from the military guys or from figure painting or from other genres for sure. It all transcends. And I respect and appreciate the people that have the ability to jump into all different worlds. I think that's really cool. The only thing for me is, like I said, I'm heavily invested into cars and trucks, and just time and investment wise, it doesn't make sense to go into those other avenues. Maybe someday, I don't know.
Right. That's cool. So let's talk about paint for a second. What kind of paints are you using?
Okay. Again, I guess I'll give some background on that. Growing up in a garage, growing up with brothers that do body work and paint and whatever and that, my brother and I went to Spokane when I was pretty little. I think I was 10 or 11, 12, maybe at the oldest. We went to Spokane to what used to be called the Autoboat Speed Show. I think they've changed it now. It's McGuire's or anyways. And I remember seeing the Pink Panther and all those all George Barris customs and all the different whatever. It's a really cool show. They actually had a little model table. They'd have a model show too there or whatever. But there was a gentleman there who had a booth set up, and he was painting t-shirts, and he had boxes and boxes of Hot Rod magazines and all these boxes of t-shirts. And he had an old Binks single action airbrush. And you would go up to him and say, I want a 68 Camaro orange with black stripes with Krager mags on it. And he would take a t-shirt, stretch it over a board, pencil it out real quick, and then take his airbrush, paint all the black things, paint in the color, highlight it, flashes of light, different whatever that, 69 Camaro and everything. And in like 10 minutes, you'd walk away with this beautiful hand-done custom t-shirt of the car of your choice. And he blew me away to the point of where my brother and I decided that we were going to invest our money and buy an airbrush together. So we bought this old Binks single action airbrush. So at 13 years old, I was airbrushing stuff with this airbrush. And then I got into the Pache with the double action. And now I've gotten into Iwata. I find Iwata is probably the best brand out there, although there's some new ones out there that look pretty cool. Those Grex ones with the trigger and that look like they might be a neat machine, because I do get hand fatigued from pushing the thing and whatever. A trigger looks like it might be a good action. So I started out very young working with actual automotive paint. I did a lot of PPG, a lot of DuPont, a lot of actual car paints. As the world changed and the isocyanites in the air got problems and they're all switching to water-based and all the different things or whatever, that paint has evolved a lot. So there's a lot of technical stuff that I won't get into here. That's a whole hour-long conversation. So I have a pretty vast background of working with paint. I've painted goalie masks, helmets, murals on cars. I don't know. Are you familiar with the monster truck Jurassic Attack? Have you ever seen Jurassic Attack?
I
It's
think
the
I know.
one that's a dinosaur. I don't think it runs anymore. Lindsay Wink was the driver, and he's driving with the Bigfoot boys now. He's driving with America or something, a different truck now. Anyways, back in the day, he drove for another gentleman who had two trucks. He had the Maniac, which was a Bigfoot knockoff. It was a Ford with lightning bolts on it and whatever, and it was called Maniac. And then the Jurassic Attack. And he did a lot of local shows here in Alberta, and then he traveled the big circuit too. Anyways, long story short, he had a 54-inch car hauler that he put those two in it, and I muraled and painted both sides and the back of that trailer. So it was like a 3-week project with a tent built around it and scaffolding, and I hand airbrushed, me and my partner, the whole, both sides, one side for Jurassic, one side for Maniac, and the back thing or whatever. So huge undertaking and a lot of work. And like I said, I've done guitars, I've done stuff and whatever. I know people who are real artists, so I don't call myself an artist because I know I'm nowhere near as good as them, but I'm good enough to be dangerous. Like, I don't mind doing a guitar, a goalie mask or something like that. Like I said, I know guys that are way better than me, so I don't profess to be great, but I'm good enough that I can get away with it and do it. So how that relates to model building, I guess, is it gives me the ability to work with just about any kind of paint out there, and I work with them all. Later on, if we do our tour, I can show you my paint collection and the different paints that I use. But I use everything from acrylics to acrylic enamels to I use splash paints, I use gravity paints, I use scale finishes, I use what's the other one? Can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's a little bit hotter, so I tend not to use it a whole bunch. I use Tamiya's, I use Testers, I use the Molotow. This is one that I discovered recently that I think is basically equivalent to that AK Super Chrome, but this stuff here, it's a refill for pens, and it's oh, here's
Is that the display?
Yeah.
It's upside down.
Yeah. Display. And so these are like $12. I get them on a channel online, and I mean, a tube of it lasts forever, and it gives me awesome chrome finish. Like these wheels here, these front runners, these are sprayed with that chrome.
Oh, wow.
So, this is a kit chrome, and this is the chrome off of.
Are you able to clear coat that?
You can, yeah.
Does it call it?
It doesn't if you do it right. I've used like your normal Tamiya clears, and those clears are not great. You'll have issues with them, but I found that 2K clear over it works, or this stuff here actually works too. It's trying to find the name on it. It's the manufacturer's called E7.
E7, okay.
Yeah, you can't. I don't know if you can see.
And that's a clear coat?
Yeah, that's a clear coat. They have some metallizers too.
Oh, okay.
But I think they're out of Spain or something. But the company's called E7. But they make this stuff here. I can't see if it's whatever, if I can get it close enough. But it's called Special, and it's made specific for clear coating, metallizers, and chrome.
Oh, so it won't take the shine. It won't dull it, huh?
No, No,
Will it work on other types of chrome or just that?
I think so. Yeah, I've sprayed it over Molotov and it worked okay, and I've sprayed it over all clad and it worked okay.
Huh. I'm gonna have to try that.
Yeah, it's I generally I've painted the chrome trim on cars, so I painted the body, clear coated it, masked it off, and instead of using a Sharpie pen or a brush or anything, I'll tape it off and I'll spray that chrome over the chrome trim, the wheel wells and the window frame and whatever and then I've clear coated the whole thing with 2K, and it's came out great. It didn't dull it at all. It looks good. So now this stuff here, the Dispel or however you say it, it actually dries. Once it's dry, you spray it on quite heavy, it dries quite quick, and it's quite handleable. If you rub it or scrape it or try to, you can rub it off, but it's not like all clad where if you barely touch it, it comes off. It's not as unstable as that. It's a lot more stable than that, but it's quite good without clear, to be honest. It's not bad.
Huh, that's cool.
So,
I'm gonna have to look into that one.
Yeah, it's reasonably priced and it's good. Like I said, I've never used the super clear that everybody's getting now. But based on what I've seen online and how I've seen people use it and the finish they're getting, I would say it's equivalent to that. It's a probably very similar way of doing it. You spray it on quite heavy. Like with all clad, if you spray the black, nice shiny black down and you just mist it with all clad, you get a really nice finished chrome and reaction. If you put it on too heavy, it starts to go gray and not whatever. Whereas this stuff's the exact opposite. If you mist it, it goes gray. But if you cake it on heavy, it really chromes up.
Huh. No, that's cool. That's super cool. So what's the one, since you got a bunch of background in the painting, what's the one thing about airbrushing, the one tip that you would give to someone if they were trying to start out?
The two main things that I would say with it, and I think the things that give people the most frustration, the first one is prep. The quality paint job comes from the prep, not from the painting, not from the paint. The proper prep, the proper time prepping, the proper time getting it ready for paint is key to a quality paint job. Most people think it's either the manufacturer of paint or how they paint or whatever that's secondary to your prep work. If you prime, prep, and finish properly, it's 90% of your paint job. The actual paint is just the sizzle on the steak. It's the last finished piece. Now, don't get me wrong. You can destroy it by not knowing what you're doing painting if your prep work's perfect. So it's all got to be good. But I think the mistake so many people make is they don't take the time in the prep work to give themselves an opportunity to get a quality paint job out of it, if that makes sense.
No, that's a good tip. That's a good tip.
And then the secondary part of it is, and one of the few lessons I got from my dad is he always said, if you take care of your tools will take care of you. And I think too many guys don't take the proper time to clean an airbrush. They'll spray it, they'll run a bit of thinner through it real quick, and they'll think it's fine. And then they'll go to use it a couple days later and it's seized up tighter than whatever, and they got to pry it apart and they get frustrated and they quit. Or they don't clean it out and they get little chunks. So they go to spray and they get spitting and chunks and globbies on their paint or whatever, and they ruin a good paint job. And it's all because they don't take care of their tool. They don't clean their airbrush properly. And to properly clean an airbrush, you need to take it fully apart and fully clean it with thinners or airbrush cleaners or whatever thing, like let them soak in a jar. Blow it through, have some sort of a pipe cleaner or reamer that you can clean through and clean it and prep. So pre-prep and then post-prep of taking care of your tool is so key. And I think a lot of guys fail there.
Yeah. And there's, I mean, I know this is me, but I know I don't do this a lot, but I'll take the airbrush apart probably every third or fourth paint job. I don't necessarily do it every time, but I know if I let it go more than that, man, I mean, you can just dip that stuff in like acetone or something, just leave the nozzles,
Yeah.
and you just watch the paint crawl after a couple days. It's
Yeah. No,
and you had it clean. That's the worst part.
it's clear. Like I've got 3 Iowata Neos that I alternate through. I've got one that I basically do any priming or pre-painting with or whatever. I've got one that's strictly for color, and I've got one that's strictly for clear coating.
Okay.
And what I do is if I'm going from color to color, so say I'm going to do a bunch of all clad. So what I'll do is I'll take the black and I'll paint everything with black, and then I'll clean it out and I'll let it sit a day and dry, throw it in the incubator or whatever. And then say some of it's going to be aluminum, some of it's going to be chrome, some of it's going to be gunmetal. I've got 3 or 4 different colors that are going to go on it, right? So like if you look at this, for instance, I've got gunmetal for the block. I've got aluminum for the heads. I've got duraluminum for the pulley and the thing. I've got dark aluminum for the pipes and the tranny. So I sprayed all that at once. So basically I got the black done. I sprayed one color through, just ran some thinner through it, sprayed the other color, ran some thinner through it. And that's fine because it's still wet and it's still whatever, and it sprays out quite good. But at the end of that painting session, I'll tear the airbrush right down to every little bit. I'll run through, I'll blow it through, I'll ream it through, I'll let it soak in a bin, I'll dry it all off, I'll lay it out on paper towel, and that's how it'll sit apart, dried out, ready to go until next time I'm ready to paint. And then I'll put it back together. I'll prep it with a little bit of thinner. I'll put some thinner in it. I'll spray that through. I'll make sure everything's spraying properly and running and whatever, put it back together. And then I'll move on to whatever I'm going to be painting that day. So that's my process. It's a lot more than a lot of guys do, but I've had too many times where I've spent 10 hours prepping and priming and sanding and getting a body ready, load some paint in the gun, and it spits a big goober of paint right in the middle of my roof. And there's nothing more frustrating than that. So it might be overkill, but I've eliminated those days.
Right. No, that totally makes sense. And I've seen some of your work. You've got some really nice paint jobs. So that totally makes sense now.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
On how you get all that. So tools. What's some of your favorite tools that you like to use while you're modeling?
I mean, my tools are pretty standard. We touched on it earlier. Using the appropriate glue for the appropriate application is important. Again, with paints, using the appropriate paint for the appropriate application is there. One tool that I've recently got that I've actually started putting into my stuff a lot is one of these, a Bondic. I got it at Home Depot. You can get it at Lowe's or any of those or whatever that. But basically what it is it's a resin pen. So you take the tip and you squeeze it and clear resin comes out. And then it's got a UV light that you just blast on it for 5 seconds and it cures it hard. So for filling gaps or for gluing clear pieces on or doing stuff, I use that a lot. That's a tool that I've recently implemented into my repertoire that I like quite a bit. Tool with the 3D printing that's quite important is a sizing, whatever these things are called. I use that a fair bit. Proper sandpapers, all the different grits, that sort of thing. I've got a Dremel with all the bits and the different sanding things and that with it. I've got a cordless drill that I use for polishing. So I've got the polishing pads on there. I got a whole bunch of those. And I find this nice because I can turn it right down to slow. And so I use this for polishing and it works quite well. Obviously, nippers and saws and clamps, knives, tweezers, files. Another tool that's extremely expensive, but I found works really well, that I'm quite happy with, that I can't see here, is this Tamiya fine line scriber. So for scribing out panel lines.
Oh, okay.
This bit is $35. The
What?
holder is 20.
Wow.
So that's $50 right there. But if you've ever had a job that you're working on and been using the back of a number 11 blade or one of these old school scribers and
Right.
ended up popping out of the thing and dragging a big scrape across your door that you got to refinish and go back to priming and filling and whatever, it's a worthwhile venture, because that you start real light, it stays in the groove, you add pressure, and for panel line scribing, it's an ideal tool.
So that Bonnet thing for the resin,
Yeah.
Are you using that on the 3D printed parts, or is
Yes.
that just for?
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
works
on the
good
3D
for
printed
that?
part. Sorry?
And that works good for that?
Oh, it works awesome. Like, for instance, you're not going to be able to see it, but when I did this transmission, this edge part right in there was so thin that it actually broke through. And what I did is I went from the back side and I poured the Bondix in and I cured it, and it filled the gap, and it's perfect. Like, it works great. And it's cheap. Like, I think this was $12 and I haven't even put a dent in it yet. Like, it's awesome. It's a great tool.
And are you able to refill that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know that you'd want to. Like, at $12, I don't know, just buy another one and be done with it. Like, I've used it a lot, and it's black, so I can't tell how much is in there, but it feels like there's still a lot in there.
Just with, you can get clear resin from like Anticubic or whatever, right? I was just curious if, they had a refill spot.
Yeah, I didn't look into it. I don't know. But actually, what I've done with that too is, like a lot of almost dropped it. A lot of people use the sprue goo.
Okay.
So that's just half a bottle of the extra thin, and then you just put chunks of sprue in it and let it melt. And
right.
then it becomes a fill piece. Like I said, a lot of people are using that, or this one's dried up now, but you pour that in there, and you can use that for your normal plastic parts. Well, what I actually do with the resin is I've got a small bottle of resin that I've let sort of coagulate a little bit in sitting out in the air. And I'll take it, and I'll take a tool. I don't have it out, but I'll take one of these and I'll scoop a little bit of it out, and I'll fill a gap with it. And then I'll use this Bondic, the UV light, and I'll cure it with that. So I've actually used the same resin that I use in my resin printer to fill gaps in jobs that I've done. Like, for instance, let's see if I can.
Oh yeah, I'm going
Okay.
to Home Depot later, so I'm definitely going to look that thing up.
So you see the nubs on this tire?
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the one kind of on that side right there, it's sort of missing.
Right.
You can see it's knocked off of there. Well, I did on a bunch of these. I'm showing it because I missed a spot. But I built that up with just resin, put a drop on, hit it with the UV cure, put a drop on, hit it with the UV, and then file it square and fixed knobs on these tires. So instead of throwing it away, you can just fix it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's, oh, that's awesome. So did you want to do the tour? I guess is the next question, because that's some pretty cool tools that you just showed.
Yeah, obviously sanding paper, sanding sticks, paints, that sort of stuff. So what I'll do is this is sort of basically like a stash ad or whatever. I'm just going to show my working area and then some of my models that I have, if that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm just going to, let me switch the.
Because, I mean, you do have a really, really nice stash. I'm not going to lie. Just from the boxes in the back. Right?
Yeah, and I just want to say I'm not bragging or showing off or anything like that. It's just I know some guys are interested in seeing sort of what I have and what I've done. So, like I said, most of these boxes, if you notice, they've got paper on them, and that's just written down what's in the box because most of them have a second model put in. So
Yeah,
lower down to the floor here. This is my working bench. If I go too fast, I apologize. That's the finished NASCAR that I'll do a video later today on. That's some odds and sods and parts.
That's
I
nice.
keep some paint down there. That's my sort of hand brush paint stuff and some parts in the pond. Those are the totes I was talking about with you earlier that are just full of old remnants and parts and bodies. And that's
yeah.
That's my sandpapers. That's a bunch of 3D printed parts and models to the floor. All the way up to the ceiling. Got some stashed in the rafters. And like Lucas C always says, no, they're not for sale. These are some interesting totes. Maybe when we come back, I'll open up some of those. But I got aftermarket rims and tires. I've got decals. Like, that's a whole tote of decals.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And more 3D printed parts and receipts, just in case I ever want to scare myself with how much money I've spent. So there's more 3D printed parts. So as you can see, I've been busy with the 3D printing.
No, that's awesome. Like I was saying, I mean, your stash, and there's some really, really nice kits in there too.
Well, like I said, I'm 56 and I've been doing this since I was 11, so I didn't buy them all yesterday.
Right.
So these are some finished ones. Some of them I've shown on YouTube, some of them I haven't. A lot of them I built before YouTube.
Oh, I like that McCormick car. That's sweet looking.
Yeah, I did do a channel on that one.
Is that that's based on the TV show, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an AMT kit for that they made. Yeah.
Right.
So this is my Anycubic Mono 6K, and then that's the Elegoo Mars, and then my clean and cure station. And this is the new 9 1/4 inch build plate. So
I know I need to upgrade to a bigger printer so I can print out bigger figures.
Nice size. And then this is more kits. These are like stacked 3 deep in there. And then this is my painting station. So I take that there and I open that window and pop it in there.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
It gets extricated through. That way I can paint inside. And then when I want to clear out the room, I put that in the window and just blow everything out of the room. So there's my incubator, spoons for testing, mask for safety. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this stuff here, Pearl-Ex.
What's Pearl-Ex? What's Pearl-Ex?
Pearl-Ex is a pearl powder that you put in your clear. You use your clear as a distributor, and then you put this Pearl-Ex in it, and you can get a pearl effect on it. So, and I've got quite a few different colors there, golds, purples, greens, blues. And I put it in with the House of Color clear that I use.
Oh, okay.
Thin it down with the Mr. Color leveling thinner, spray it through my Iowata in my booth, which is extremely dirty right now. It's usually a lot cleaner. And this is a tip that I give guys that are buying these. If you ever make the mistake of not doing this, as soon as you spray this thing, you can never get it clean. What I do is I line it with this paper. And then when I'm done, I just strip all this paper out. Even this is covered in the paper. I can take that back to its original cleanliness. put new paper in it. I got a roll of it down here. Takes me about 10 minutes, and then I'm clean again. So just a tip, when you buy one of these stations, the first thing you want to do is line it. You can line it with foil or saran wrap, or I use this paper, but line it with something to protect it. And then when it comes time to clean it, it's a lot better.
Yeah, I
So
did that.
That's my spray cans. And then I pulled these out, but sorry, this is tough with the cam. But I've got lots of color options with the gravity color, which is great color, but their service is crap. A lot of House of Color paints, lots of splash. And underneath there, I've got my scale finishes. So too many color choices, and then there's my all clads. And there's some primers and different stuff. So bear with me, I'm going to walk upstairs and show you my Hobby Link Japan stuff.
Oh, yeah. Get to the good stuff. Yeah.
It's my dog. Say hi, Koa.
That's a happy puppy there. Oh,
so wow. This is my wall of Hobby Link.
That's cool.
I'm going pretty quick. If somebody wants to pause and see something specific, they can.
No,
and then cool. These are some more totes of partially finished stuff that I just took out of the boxes to save room.
Huh.
Yeah. So it's an old spare room we have that I populated with the Hobby Link stuff. Go, guys. The houses in Calgary are small, but they have lots of floors.
There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah. So basically, I've monopolized most of the basement, other than the laundry room and the one spare bedroom, to be my model area.
No, that's awesome, man. That's quite a collection of kits.
Just gonna try to go back to the other screen here. Bear with me a sec.
So with that being, after showing all that, what's the one kit that you don't have that wish you did have?
It's funny. I just showed them upstairs there, but I've always liked the old school Porsche Boxsters, like the early 60s Boxsters, like the 928s, or I don't remember what they were called. I've always wanted one of those, and I've only ever seen the 16th scale one, but I recently found one at Spotlight Models and then another one at Hobby Link. So I just recently got two of those. So if you'd have asked me 2 weeks ago, that would have been sort of my most coveted Holy Grail kits, but I went and got two of them. So to be honest, there's really nothing out there that some of the old classic Johans, I guess, that I'd like to get my hands on. Some of the older things or whatever. To be completely honest, those would just be purely for financial, and that's not really what I do this or why I do it. I'm a builder and a collector. I don't sell models. Like I've only sold a handful of models in the past. I buy them to have them, and I want to have them, and I like collecting them, and I like building them, and it's sort of my hobby. Like I can sit down here for hours and just look through the kits, and I'll pull one out and go, oh, I want to do this to this, or I want to make this look like this, or whatever. And to me, that's entertaining, and how I relax and how I sort of tone down at the end of a day or whatever. I referee a lot of hockey, so I have a lot of late nights, and I'll get home at midnight and I'm still pretty wired from hockey. So I'll come down here for half an hour and just sort of look through boxes and dream about what I want to do to each kid or whatever. And it's a calming factor for me. The other part that I don't get into a whole lot is in my early 30s, I was diagnosed with MS. And so I asked my doctor what my long-term prognosis was, and he said probably by 50, I'd need some kind of walking aid. Well, I'm 56 now and I'm skating about 50 hours a month. So I think I'm beating the odds, but I find the modeling helps me with my fine motor skills and helps me to keep my hands busy and keep my eyes focused and doing stuff. So, I mean, if nothing else, I think the activity with hockey and the activity with model building and whatever has helped me to beat the odds on that. So that's has value unto its own. Yeah, it's something that's always been fun for me. So it's what I do.
And yeah, definitely cool stuff, right? I mean, it's with the collection, you're printing stuff, you know, it's all like just one big happy hobby that we all like to enjoy, right?
I don't know if I'll ever do this or not, but I've kind of loosely toyed with the idea at some point. Like I have property on Vancouver Island, and that's where I'm going to retire to. And I've got a large third bay in my house down there that's built for like a boat or a camper or whatever. And I've kind of toyed with the idea of turning that into a sales outlet for models and model parts and different things. And I think if possibly as sort of my retirement or segue to retirement, I might open up a mail order type of business out of that garage. And so like buy and sell kits, buy and sell older kits, 3D print parts and sell them and sort of stuff like that, bring in sort of obscure different things and sell it. I mean, there's a lot of people doing it now, so I might have been too late to the game. I don't know, but I think if you do it right, you could still establish a market. So I don't know. I'm thinking it might be a potential avenue for resources at some point in my life. I don't know. And at that point, I could sell off my collection if I wanted. I don't know. We'll see. What that Jeff wants me to eat glue?
Yeah, don't eat the glue, Dwayne. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right? I gather you know Jeff.
Yeah. Actually, Jeff was one of the first guys to jump on and support my channel and give me a shout out, and he definitely helped me grow the channel. I think he's done it on 2 different occasions. So thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. Still haven't got me to the 1,000 hump. Yeah, the whole sub thing that's a whole different animal. I mean, I don't do this for the subs, and I think I've said it before. I think the 50 to 100 key contributors and whatever are sub to me and do comment and are active. So, I mean, it's kind of bittersweet. I don't do this for the subs. I don't do it consistently. I don't do 2 videos a week and whatever and try to hit the things or follow the algorithms. Or I don't do any of that crap. If I have something to say, I do a video. If I don't, I don't. And I honestly don't care how many subs I have. But at the same time, some of these guys have been here 6 months and they got 2,000 subs. And it's like, what the hell are they doing different than me? But I guess maybe they got a focused effort on it. It is what it is. So I'm kind of 2 minds on that. Like, I'd like to have 1,000 subs. I think that's sort of a area or a target to get or whatever. But at the same time, it's not that important because guys like Jeff and yourself and Henry and all the main guys on here, they comment on my stuff. I comment on theirs. We communicate. They do the lives. I interact in the lives. It's whatever. So it seems to be the same guys. So, I mean, I'd rather have 200 subs that are active in the thing than 2,000 subs that who knows who the hell they even are, right? So it's kind of a bittersweet thing. I guess I'd kind of like to have more subs, but at the same time, I think I've got the main ones and I'm happy with them, and I appreciate and respect the stuff and the work and the contribution that those guys do. So
like we were talking before this, I mean, the whole Meet the Modeler thing was about getting people to, kind of watch my channel a little bit. Because before I started this, I didn't have hardly anybody. And I'd get 1 or 2 views on a video and that would be it. And now it's, a lot more, but it's also a lot more on all the other stuff I do too. But,
yeah.
It's,
yeah, well, you're a lot more diversified than me. I'm definitely a niche market. I'm cars and trucks only. I don't do military. I don't do RC.
Right.
I whatever. So I'm limited to who's going to be interested in what I have to say, anyways. Whereas somebody who does figures and RCs and stuff, or whatever, they've got a wider audience potentially in that. And again, it's just a weird thing. I mean, I'm not the most outgoing guy in the world. I think my videos are pretty flatline, deadpan. I don't tell a lot of jokes or do a lot of hilarity or whatever, and that it is what it is. But people are gonna watch, they're gonna watch, and if they're not, they're not. I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it, that's for sure.
Right, absolutely. That's understandable and a great way to look at it too.
Yeah, because I mean, I do this for myself primarily. Like, actually, to be honest, up until this summer, I've never shown a model. Well, I'll backtrack and do that again. I don't go to model car shows. First and foremost, there's not a lot of them around here. And then with COVID and all that other stuff, there was none. So I actually participated in my first ever model car show here in Calgary in the summer. And I got a gold and a bronze. I showed 4 cars and I got a gold on my Corvette and I got a bronze on that motorcycle I showed earlier. And then the other 2 didn't fetch anything, and which was, again, my own naivety. I had 3 cars, 3 of my 4 were in the same class. So I was competing against myself. So it wasn't very smart, but I've learned since then or whatever that. The backtrack part is way back when I was quite small, I want to say 13 or 14, there was a local drugstore that sold models that put on a little model car show. And I put in a model and I didn't understand the classes and the categories and nobody explained it to me. And I thought, well, box stock is probably the one that I do the best in or whatever. So I put this car in box stock and the guy basically gave me shit. He's like, oh, you've got plug wires and you put body fill in this and you put this and you did that. This can't be box stock. It's got to go in custom and whatever. And just kind of made me feel about that big. But then he sent me in with all these guys that had like fully modified cars and all this or whatever. I didn't stand a chance. And I don't know, it left a really bitter taste in my mouth for model car shows, just the way I was treated and the way the whole thing went and that. So I basically build for myself. If it wasn't for YouTube, nobody would see my stuff or know what I did. So it was fun. I'll do more shows, but yeah, it's a different world. It's a different mentality. It's a different way of building. I just build for myself. If I'm happy with it, I'm happy. It goes on the shelf and that's where it goes to die, collect dust.
Well, and I don't know about up in Canada, right? I think Canada's where you're at, right?
Yeah, I'm in Calgary, Canada. Yeah.
So there's a difference in the hobby from East Coast to West Coast too. Like,
oh yeah,
East Coast, there's all kinds of shows. And on the West Coast, there are, but they're not, they're just in like one, like Phoenix, LA, Santa Clara, and then it's like Portland and then Seattle. And it's, on the East Coast, it's like every couple 100 miles, there's a different type of show.
Yeah, it looks like they can go every second weekend to a new show.
Yeah, right. I mean, at least that's the impression I get.
Yeah. No, that's how I see it too. Like for me, I don't know how well you know provinces, but I don't know of any in BC. I know Alberta has the small one that I went to, and then they have a IP, whatever that is, regional show that they do, and it switches between Edmonton and Calgary. So it was in Edmonton this year, but it'll be here in Calgary next year. So maybe I'll go to that too. But yeah, like Toronto, Eastern Canada, it sounds like they've got a few, Ottawa, whatever. But then if you're there, you've got Detroit and Chicago and Buffalo and all those other ones that are a drive away and that. So yeah, it's definitely a different world from the east to the west. And I think even a different world again from Canada to US.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So there anything else you want to bring up? Because we've been on here about an hour. I'm going to let you ask me anything you want.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was going to show some of the paint jobs I did or whatever that, but I've done that before on my channel and I'll do it again. So we won't be redundant and do it here. I wasn't sure we'd be able to fill an hour and here we are. So it went by quick. It was all good. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't have a lot of questions or whatever that. I mean, I think it's interesting the fact that you do a lot of different things and that's kind of cool. And in some ways I kind of envy that. I definitely appreciate and respect it. Do you have a favorite genre, or do you like to keep it fresh by switching it from one to the other?
So lately it's been figures, only because I got into the 3D printing side of it, and now I can just print my own.
Yeah,
but I've always been more of a sci-fi guy. I've done a couple spaceships. I've done the Deep Space Nine spaceship. The Batmobile, I call that sci-fi just because it's, it's comic books, but it is sci-fi kind of,
it's an automotive sci-fi crossover.
Right. But yeah, I've always been more kind of into the, not cars a lot. I mean, I do have a little bit of a car collection, but yeah, I've been more into sci-fi. If I really had to choose, it'd be sci-fi.
Yeah, cool. And I've never done a sci-fi. I've got one or two Batmobiles that I got in other collections. I've got a few sort of different things or whatever that, but yeah, it's not really been my bag. I grew up around cars. Like that's just when I was a little gaffer, when my dad babysat me, his idea of babysitting me was you sit on that while I fix this car. So I've been around them my whole life. And I mean, I went in a different path. I liked sports. I've been a hockey guy my whole life. I still play in ref hockey. I've liked sports and chasing girls, and I just liked having my knuckles in place and not a permanent greasy hand. Like my brothers, their hands are all mangled and they never have skin on their knuckles. And I think they got dirt on there for 20 years. So that was never appealing to me, but I always was around them. I always appreciated cars. I've always liked speed. I've always liked a different car. Like I like creativity. Like if I had a do-over, I'd be Chip Foose's competition. Like I would do what he did. If I would have been focused on learning, the opportunity was there. I just didn't take advantage of it. Had I done that, I think I could have done some really cool customs and been like a Chip Foose or something like that. Ideally, I probably should have. I would have had a lot more money, but I didn't. It is what it is. So cars and trucks are for me, but I do appreciate and respect what other guys do. I mean, like for instance, I don't have any tattoos, but both my son and my daughter have tattoos, and I'm an artist person, and like I like tattoos. I like the art. I like the creativity. I like the visualness of it. It's just there's nothing I've liked long enough to permanently have it on my body, and I'm not a big fan of needles and pain. So that was a difference there. So the reason I say that is it's a segue to the guys that do the military, the aircraft, the RCs, the figures, the whatever. I mean, I appreciate it and respect it and love what they do. But it's just something I don't have the means to invest my time in or the desire. But it doesn't mean I don't like it or think what I do is any better.
Right. It's interesting. Like the ones that really don't irritate me. That's the wrong word to put it. But they only do like Tiger tanks, right? And they'll do and they've got like 80 of them done.
Yeah.
And it's like my whole thing is, well, could you do a Sherman tank? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and it's their thing. It's totally cool. I'm not trying to bash on anybody, but it's like, to me, that's just, I would get bored. I have to do something a little different each time.
Yeah, and I mean that's cool, and I get that. Like my variety is a different paint job. Make this one a Pro Street. Make this one a lowrider. Turn this one into a 4x4. Do a custom paint job on that. Add some 3D parts to it. Like if there's a kit I really like, I'll buy 3 or 4 of them. And the reason is I'm going to make them 3 or 4 different ways. I'm going to make one stock. I'm going to make one a Pro Street. I'm going to make one a beater. I'm going to make one green. I'm going to make one orange. Like I can't just buy one because then I never build it because I wouldn't decide which route to go. But if I have 4, I can buy one, build it, and know that I've got the others to do a different avenue for. So the diversity is within what I do, but you need that, right? Like I couldn't build 10 stock 68 Camaros. Like that would be crazy, right? Like it just so
right. But there's a couple people in my area that I know that's all they'll build is just one thing, and it's just over and over and over again, and it's like,
yeah, that seems a little crazy, but
right. Did you have any other questions for me?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, obviously, is there something you want to talk about or something that's relevant to you? I'd more than happy to hear it, but can't think of any sort of real questions per se.
Okay. Let me see who's next week actually. Oh, we're gonna have Manny on next week. Sweet. Yeah, Manny's gonna be on next week. I'm gonna be doing a video of maybe a stash ads, hopefully this next week. But other than that, I don't really have any other questions for you. I think I'm just gonna end this if you're okay with it, and I will talk to you in a couple minutes. Okay.
Sounds good. It's been fun. Take care. And thanks for watching, whoever chimed in.
Yeah. And thank you for making this all work. I know doing this over emails and stuff this week, it gets kind of chaotic at times.
Yeah.
But we were able to make it work today. And thank you for coming on. And
all right, thanks for having me.
All right. All right, everybody. So that was Dwayne. And we will have Manny on next week. And I will see you guys later. Bye.